Welcome, everybody. Sorry for the slightly late start to send in terms of sending the invitation, the whatever it's called, the login. Had a very rough weekend. I was quite ill, and that's why I did not send the or post. I mean, on Amazon the YouTube videos until late Saturday when I was just beginning to feel better enough to go get my laptop and bring it to my sick bed. So that's when I did post all the, if you missed last week's, either of the two lectures, you'll see them now. They actually was sometime late Saturday or early Saturday evening that I posted those. If you looked and didn't see them Friday, that's why. I think it was something I ate or some combination. I had acid reflux and all the other various things one can have from some kind of digestive problem. It wasn't anything more serious, but that'll lay you low sometimes, which it did for 36 hours. So then I was playing catch up, and that's why it was later than usual for me to send you guys the Zoom logon info. So that's enough about that. We're here now, though, to get everyone up to speed about your testing, midterm testing requirements. In other words, how is the midterm going to be given? What's going to be on it? What's not? Whether or not it's part of the whole what you have from your. Now see how badly this is going to be a funny video. I even misbuttoned my shirt, and I haven't done that since I was 19. Now, and rushing out the door to take classes at UC Berkeley, 8 a.m. classes. I hated them. At Cal, and I had to run all the way across South Campus and UC Berkeley campus to get to class. So I apologize, everyone, for the delay, but I don't want to look like I have lost IQ points. Wait, yes, I have. Yeah, it was a rough weekend. So don't go to faculty events in the warm weather where things aren't refrigerated. That's what I was the guest of honor because of the fact that I wrote the text for the display on Maybeck, which I imagine I'm still doing this. So this will be fun. You guys get to see something you've never seen before. At least I didn't forget to put my shirt on. I've seen some funny, what are they postings on? My daughter showed me on, I think it was TikTok or something about professors or teachers teaching Zoom classes and forgetting to get fully dressed. Well, that isn't what's happening here, you guys. So, okay, there we go. So we're going to take this whole period for you to be up to speed before we finish with any questions you have. That's obviously always the case. You can shoot your hand up. You can say you need a question or do that little icon thing, whatever. Because by the end of this session, you will know exactly what the test is going to cover and what it isn't, what is required of you, and how to study for it to get a good grade. Okay, that's what we're going to do today. That's the entire session. Okay, so before we get to that, I did get, I think it was 2 or 3 late papers from this class. So luckily they came in before the 1 week mark. They were less than a week late, so they only had 5 points off late. I sent those to a reader, and they will be, the grades themselves will be forwarded to you this afternoon if you turned your paper in late. Okay. And then the next really important announcement should be rather straightforward and obvious. The test is next Wednesday at the start of class. You should log in by 3:05, but I will wait till 3:15 to give people more time, for you in case you're, whatever, coming from work or something, to make sure you're all logged in before 3:10 at the latest. Okay, because
wait, the test is next week?
This Wednesday. Next Wednesday.
Oh, this Wednesday. Okay,
yeah, it's the 16th. It's on your syllabus. Yeah, no, that's what we're here for. So the test is going to be, an hour, but you guys will have all the way till midnight to turn it in. So it is the next meeting. That's 2 days from today, March 16th. The first slide will hit the screen, your computer screens, at 3:15. And the last one will be extra credit optional. And I'll leave that on till at least 4:15, maybe 4:20. A lot of you won't even need an hour, but if you need more, you'll be able to do that because the test is not recorded. It's not, if I put it on YouTube, then that defeats the purpose of having a test, because then it just becomes yet another writing assignment. The test is a test, but it's open book and open notes, so everyone has that advantage. And I did that with my in-person classes too. I told them that it wouldn't be fair if they were the one class of all my art history classes this semester who didn't get to use their notes or any books that they choose to use. But also you get until midnight to turn it in. Well, don't wait till 11:59. Hopefully you'll turn in, but well before midnight on the day of the test. It's not going to be recorded. It's not going on YouTube. I'll send you guys an email as a reminder, because I see we have maybe a couple of people that haven't made it to this session. Now this session's being recorded. So if you need to double check something, or for those 2 or 3 people who aren't with us today, sounds serious, I mean, who are not online today, they will be able to watch, or anybody can, this. Well, no, wait a minute. What am I saying? I'm recording it. All right, I'll do this. I'll post it. Yeah. And send an email. It's the only way to do this, because it's only 2 days from now. I'm not going to wait till Thursday or Friday. That wouldn't help anybody. So those who aren't here now, well, you're just going to have to check your email and say, oh, I missed that review session. I better look at it on. So I will post it on YouTube before 5 today, this lecture. And then you guys are with me now and you're watching. You have all the time you need to ask questions. You probably won't need to watch it again, but it will be on YouTube. And I will leave it on until I switch to the new videos for my other classes, which aren't taking an exam. This is the only class I'm giving an exam to this week of my 3 art history classes. So once I post things, I'll then just take down, delete this review session, but I'll leave it up, till Thursday at least. Okay, so that's the first order of business, the timing of everything. Again, you want to log on. I know some people log on, half an hour late. That's not going to work well. You'll be, minus a whole bunch of points, because I'm not going back. It's being given this test, this midterm, as it will the final, in real time, and it will be not more than it's 8 slides. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. The point is, all the slides will be on the screen long enough, more than enough time, believe me, for you to write about them during the test. However, you can go back. You've got so many advantages in this format, this online format, over the in-person classes I taught for every semester until the pandemic, which they had to take the test, no notes, open book, forget it. It was like all colleges had for so many generations, right? Which is just, you just have to study, and then the test is it. And then if you miss the test, you have to do a makeup assignment, which takes as long or longer, and it's, worth the same amount. If you had you only got to do that, by the way, if you had a family or medical emergency. This is not my policy. This is the JC policy, that you can verify in writing, such as you had a medical emergency, you were sick, or you had to take someone to the hospital, and you have the note from the hospital or a doctor to prove that. It's not my policy. I have to enforce that. Or a family emergency, such as having to leave town, to take care of a relative or something. And that should be obvious, because you'd have some evidence if you're traveling outside of the immediate Bay Area. Those are the only exceptions. And then there needs to be a discussion one-on-one privately between me and the individuals who might be requesting an alternative or makeup. Once I've seen the evidence in writing, then that would allow them to do a makeup. But the makeup is at least as much work as the test, if not more. I mean, again, the makeups are set standard policies by the department chairs and things. I always consult with them when I'm about ready to give someone an option for makeup. So you'd rather just get it out of the way. And since it's open book and you have until midnight, you can go back and add things to your answers, correct or change, and then you do need to submit them. And I will show you now how to do that, and remind you in the email that I send for those who might want to watch or missed today's review session, how to submit your tests. The midterm, here we go, for this class. I actually have this one already made up from last semester, is our 2.1 midterm. And it's a PDF, right? Underline last name, comma, first name, very similar to what you did with your papers. And of course, it has to be a PDF. I can't open them or forward them to readers to grade unless they are a PDF. Again, those are my rules. That's the college rules. But if you want to be sure that I get them, you should send them to markw@aol.com, timely, quickly, efficiently. But if you want to send them to both, that's fine, because of course I will check the Outlook account. But Outlook is so cumbersome. It's hard to explain unless you've ever had to use it as a teacher or an employee. It's much slower there's much more spam on it than I have on AOL. I have a very high spam filter, so I usually don't have any spam, or very, very little that gets through. Plus, it takes way longer to delete each email you don't want. And if you don't do that every day, you've got 200 emails, of which 2/3 or more are spam by the time 3 or 4 days go by. So that doesn't happen on my AOL filter.
Last time I sent them to both. Is that okay? Or
yeah.
do you not
Yeah.
know?
Oh, yeah. Sure. Because then I might just see it first on Outlook, and then as long as it's a PDF, I can forward it to either download it and grade it myself or forward it to reader. I usually grade about a third to half of all the assignments for each of the 4 assignments. So what I've said this before, but of course not everybody would have reason to remember. I can guarantee you I will grade at least one of your 2 types, one of the 2 papers and one of the 2 tests. Plus I check every single submitted grade from the readers before I forward to you your grade. And what I do is I explain how you did. For instance, the late papers, I already know what they were. And of course, they had a few points, only 5 points off for being late. That could make a difference, though, for some of them. And they weren't all A's, but whatever. If they were missing points, then it's easy to find out what you were missing on your first paper, whether it was late or on time. If that was the case, then you will get an explanation from me personally after I've reviewed the grading done by my reader, or if I did the grading, of course, it's already done. Then you'll get, anywhere from 1 or 2 lines to, a short paragraph explaining what you were missing. And that will give you the opportunity, of course, to double check your second papers before you turn them in to make sure. The biggest thing people keep forgetting is, it's not most papers, but both some of the on time and late ones, is just not doing one of 2 things. Either not doing the in-text citations, just a bibliography, that's already 5 points off, or forgetting to use a print source that was originally printed. It's easy to do that. In fact, Encyclopedia Britannica, I already said this when we talked about how to write the papers and the requirements, is the safest source, because then there's no question it was originally a printed source. But if it isn't obvious, you got to say that. I mean, I might be able to tell, my reader might be able to tell, but if you say from original printed source, then we know, okay, well, that meets that requirement. And if you don't do that, that's 5 points off. So quite a few people miss, like, say, 10 points off before you even start grading the paper, because they didn't do either of those things. It's easy to fix that on your second paper. Plus extra credit. Of course, you'll have many opportunities for extra credit. We still have, what is it now, 10 weeks left in the semester. And there's so many extra credit options. But we'll get to those later, because we want to start doing the review. So let me start by asking, if you guys have questions that I'm going to answer in the next hour or so as we do the review, roughly. It won't be quite an hour, actually. No, because we're at 3:21. It'll be in the next 50 minutes or so. We might end 5 minutes early or so, depending on how many questions there are. But does anybody have any questions now that you've been thinking about just specifically the midterm? I'll probably be answering them in the next 50 minutes. But if there's something I wasn't thinking of including, then now's your chance to ask any kind of question that might be very specific.
So for all the definitions that we have, like the definition sheet, it's all like your definition that you gave. Like, it's not like
yes.
a random definition online. It's like the one you specifically.
Right. That's why when I give them to you and I tell you, write those down now, I do it that way. So you have the correct wording to consider. And I'm not going to, I expect you to memorize those, regurgitate them, give the following 5 definitions. That's too specific. Although you could do that easily, because it's an open book. I will make a true false section I might as well tell you that now. One of the there are three different sections on the exam. One of them is the shortest one, is a true false section. You'll have 10 minutes in real time, but then plenty of time to go back and double check before midnight if you want to take that extra time before you have the deadline to turn in the midterms, which is that I'll write out a definition, and if it's correct the way I gave it to you, then it's true. But if any part of it is false, this is all in the written instructions you'll see on the test sheet. If any part of it is false, you would then mark it as false. I'll tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and hold up but not the actual true false questions. Obviously, you should wait to do those when the test itself is being given in real time. But let me go ahead and let's see if I saved these. Yeah, I did. Here's how the test looks. This is true for all of my, now this may say 1.2, but it doesn't change. Everyone understand me here? Don't freak out. Oops, it says 1.2. This isn't going to help me. Yes, it will. So I can put my finger over that. Or why don't I just write it? Let me get a pen. Just cover it over and write 2.1. It's exactly the same format. And it's a very flexible form of test. I've been using it for many years. I did create this. The cover sheets, Sarah Gill created those for your papers. And I can't think of a better system. It's much more clear than the ones when I took Cal, UC Berkeley or Cal art history classes. It was often hard to know what we were supposed to include and how hard, we had to hit certain points. Okay, so let's call this 2.1 midterm. You're going to start with, 5 slides. You see that there? 5 slides in which you identify them exactly as on the syllabus. So you'll have your syllabus in front of you. And when you see a slide and you recognize it, of course, most you won't even need 2 minutes. In fact, even a minute is usually longer than most people need. But of course, I'm going to reduce in a few minutes when you get to this first or through this first part of how the test looks. I'll do that first. Then you would just write in the exact title spelled as it was, because you are expected to get the right spelling on all these things. Of course, again, because it's open book, that shouldn't be a problem. The title, the way it was on the syllabus, the artist or location, because some of these slides we don't, most of the early ancient art history slides, we don't know the artist. So if it was a location, you put that, the country or city. And the date, again, it's what's on the syllabus. It should be pretty obvious. So that part only takes 10 minutes. So you see why I'm saying if you show up late, 10 minutes late, you're pretty much not going to have a chance of getting better than a C at best on the test if you got everything else correct. So do log in, please, everyone, by 3:10 at the latest, because the first slide will be on the screen at 3:15. Again, you'll get an email to remind you. And for those who aren't here, they'll have that information. The true false, I'm not going to show it to you because, well, you know what? I can, because it's for art 1.2. So it isn't going to be the kinds of definitions you would get. But just so you, just quick glance, so you get an idea what it looks like. The true false section is the second section. You'll have 10 minutes on that, in which you just need to read the definitions. There'll be 5 out of the list. I'm going to cut that list down to, we'll do that in the next 45 minutes or so as we do the review. And then finally, you'll have the slide, the third section that takes the most time is the slide analysis or short essay section. And there's all the instructions are right there in front of you. So you have 2 choices on how to, first you identify those. I will even say this when the slides are on the screen. So you're going to have like 3 different ways to remind you what you're required to do to get full points here. The first slide will be on the screen, all 3 slides. There were only 3 slide essays, 3 short essays. 2 paragraphs is the requirement for each of the slide essays. 2 paragraphs. That's pretty reasonable. And each paragraph only needs to be 6 sentences. I mean, to be safe, you might want to write 7 or even 8, just make sure in case you make a mistake that you covered your bases, so to speak, or give yourself a margin for error, whatever phrase you want to use, whatever cliche. But you don't have to. If you know that you can correctly analyze 6 of the formal elements, 1 sentence on each. That's all you need is a paragraph. And I've already, in the late papers, 2 of the 3 late papers did not separate their formal analysis and their meaning. You just lost the whole grade there, because that makes it almost impossible for me as the reader to figure out which part are you doing? Are you doing formal elements? Are you doing the meaning? Are you going back and forth? That's been, the requirement since I first sent, of course, everyone the 5 requirements of the short paper, but it's also the requirement for these short essays. And it says it right here. And again, I'll repeat that when the slides are on the screen. There's 3 slide essays, and they stay on the screen for 15 minutes, and they're worth 15 points. So how do you get the 15 points? If you identify those slides, so I know you're talking about the right slide on the top line, you get 1 point for each of those facts. Again, whatever on the syllabus. Once you look at the slide and say, okay, here's slide essay number 1, let me identify it first, for the title, and then the location or artist, and the date. Then you have 2 paragraphs of 6 sentences each. 6, not all 9, but 6 of the formal elements should be in a paragraph of formal analysis. You don't have to label them. It'll be obvious if you keep them separate. And then you can guess 6 facts or 6 sentences. Each one should be in a separate sentence, so there's no ambiguity about the meaning. And I gave you guys, as you all know, way over 6 sentences on the meaning for each of these must-know slides. So again, just 6 facts from your notes, from the class notes. It's you don't have to go back and forth to the textbook. That slows you down. Plus, sometimes the textbook emphasized different things than I did, or when it overlaps, then of course that's already in my notes. So just use my notes. That's the best tip I can give you in terms of how efficiently to use the time for each of the slide essay questions. So you have that 15 minutes, and some of you won't even need that long. But if you need more, well, you've already identified the slide, so you can go back after the exam's over, because you have till midnight, right? You can go back and say, okay, did I really get all of the facts I want down, or should I add a couple, or should I correct something? Same thing with the formal elements. Did I do a good job? Remember, you don't just list them. That's not analysis. There's a dynamic lines in this composition. Again, you just missed some points, because that is an analysis. That's listing. As you all know from doing your papers, overall the papers were quite good in this class, so my compliments. And even the ones that didn't get an A at least showed that they understood the concept. So I'm encouraged. That should give you a shot at getting full credit or nearly full points on the slide essays for the midterm, because the same systems required. 2 examples for each of the 6 elements in the slide essay part. And again, you'll have so much time, and you'll have your notes from in front of you for each of those slides from the lectures that you either attended or saw online. Please go ahead, a question.
I was going to say, okay, so we don't list them off. We don't do like formal, blah. We do like in one paragraph, we do all of that. So we do this piece has blah, 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 like is dynamic, and you can see that like in 2
where
examples,
is
right?
where are the don't forget,
and then you go to the next sentence and you go, and then this piece has rhythm, blah, blah, blah. It's not like a list, it's like a paragraph with,
right, in essay format. Oh yeah, no, it's a good point. I'm glad you asked that. Yeah, when I say essay, don't list them. Bullet points off right there. That's an outline. That's nice when you're planning to write a paper that you haven't turned in yet. I hope that's what you guys did. Many of you obviously could. I could tell you did that. That should be common practice since, well, I would guess middle school, or at least high school. Certainly for college classes, when you're writing an essay, is outline the ideas first. No, this is the finished, yes, essay, full sentence format, and 6 full sentences, each one a separate element of composition. So some of you will have more than 6 sentences, because you might want to write a second sentence about that element. That's up to you. But the requirement is one sentence for each element with the examples in an essay format. Okay, question. Another.
Sorry,
No, go ahead. That's what we're here for.
I had a question. You were talking about how our textbooks might diverge or overlap with when we're using facts. So
with what I give you. I would just study my notes.
We should only study the lecture.
I would just study the class notes. From
okay, so you're not drawing from the book?
That'll save you time. The textbook is useful for the images and for identifying which they do, and I use the same information from the text for each of the must-know slides. Now, a few of them aren't in Stockstead. Like every textbook publisher, they play games. Pardon me. I know if anybody's listening out there from those textbook companies that we use for our college textbooks in this JC, they might say, well, how dare you accuse us? Of course, they're trying to sell books. So what do? They call it a new edition and they move things around. And so some editions, we covered this, remember, the first week in class, might have different chapter numbering, but that isn't the point I'm making. It's that some of the information or even individual slides, actual works of art, I should just say some of the individual works of art. It's not more than 10%, it's probably less, 5 to 10% of my syllabus must-know slides. You might have to look up if you're making a flashcard. I don't think you need to do that, though, in an open book, open note exam. I wouldn't think you need to make flashcards. That's what people would do in the in-person classes when it was all closed book tests and
Thank you. I just wanted to check there was nothing that would be, that wasn't covered in lectures that we would need to get from the book for the test.
No,
so,
good
thank
point.
you.
No, it's a very well phrased point you made. And yes, the answer is don't worry about that. Just stick to the notes. I'll say that in all three of my slide lecture review. Well, one of them's in person. That's the Wednesday night evening class. I don't think I need to write that in an email when I give you just a quick reminder of the test coming up. But you answered your own question correctly. And thank you for bringing that up. That should help everyone. Yeah, I wouldn't waste time going back and rereading the text. It was helpful before each lecture to give you context, because it's a well-written textbook, but we wouldn't use it in this college. And it's inclusive, and even though Marilyn Stockstead passed away, sadly, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, her partner in that, process of writing it is still continuing to do the research. So it's a good textbook. And it's really good for your papers, to use it as a source, as one of your 3 sources. But for the examinations, the 2 tests, the reviewing, and for writing from open notes on an open book, open note test, you have the book next to you for, reference if you want it, right? In terms of, identifying the images or something, maybe, instead of flashcards or something, but you don't need to go look up the information from the textbook to get an A in the test, just the notes, okay, from the class lectures. Good point. Okay, any other that kind of broad or basic questions? This is a chance to ask. Okay, we didn't go through the final aspect of this, which is how many points are each of these worth? These slide essays, they're worth 15 points. So if you get all the 3 facts from the syllabus at the top of each of the short essays correct, and you give me full, complete sentences, 6 of the elements of composition correctly analyzed, and 6 facts from the notes in class, you get 15 points. So you can do the math. That's 3 of those slides times 15 is 45. I didn't actually do this, so let me go backtrack. Sorry, I should have said this with the first page when I held it up. Each of these slides is worth 15 points if all you do is identify them. So you get 5 points for each of the, yeah, that's right. 3 points. I had it right the first time. So if you give the title correctly, right, of the first slide and the location, because these are almost all locations, the ancient art slides, we rarely know the artist. So, if there's an artist, though it's on the syllabus, then you'd see it and you'd add their name. So title, let's say location and date, you get all 3 right. That's 9 points, 3 for each of those facts you took off the syllabus. 9 times 5, 45 points. I did it that way deliberately so that it's equally weighted in terms of identifying and analyzing slides. And then the 10 points, because 45 points for the getting, if you got all the slide IDs correct, and then another 45 if you did a thorough job, met the requirements for the slide essays, and got 15 on each, times 3 is 45. That's 90. So then the next remaining on that 10 points, the other 10 points you get up to 100 is from the true false section. If you get all those right, you get 100. But wait, there's more, as they say. Well, do they anymore? Late night TV. Does anybody buy anything off late night TV anymore? That was a big deal in the 80s and 90s, right? Oh, yes, it's Vegematic will slice, dice, and cut you if you put your hand in it incorrectly because you're drinking too much at 2 a.m. when you're watching TV. Anyway, the point is having done all that, you're up to 100 points if you did it all correctly, but you can get up to 105, and some people will. Because if everything else is perfect, and it's optional, you choose, there is an optional extra credit question. And the extra credit question has no formal analysis. It's not from the syllabus. There's no facts, there's no dates, there's no formal elements. It's just use your imagination. Everybody has an imagination. You don't have to get fancy. You're not graded down for creativity or grammar or spelling. It's 5 sentences about the slide on the screen. And I will start by telling you what it is. It's a slide I took. I'll go ahead and tell you it's a museum slide. I used to use real people, but then I thought, well, it could be a bit of a conflict with somebody saying, maybe I don't want my images shown on a class Zoom video, or I mean, live, I meant live exam. So I use it, something from a real museum exhibit, and I guarantee the one I picked for the midterm here, there'll be a lot of imaginary things you could say about it, but I'll give you the facts. I'll say, this is a slide that I took in such and such a museum, such and such a city, and it was of such and such an object, an art object, and the date of it and all that. But then you just take that information and use it how you want, or just write it the way I gave it to you. Just writing 5 sentences will give you 5 points extra credit. And I've seen people miss an A, not just on their test or on any exam. If they don't do the extra credit, they sometimes don't get an A in the whole class grade because they're 4 or 5 points below the minimum requirement. And if they've done one of those or both, let's say, there'll be a similar question on the finals, exact same format, exactly same format, worth the same, 100 points. Point is that the extra credit is worth 5, so you could obviously get an easy 5 points, and you have until midnight to do that. But of course that slide will be on the screen. I think it's 15 more minutes after the 3 slide essays. So that's
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I was gonna say, do we have to print out the test? Like
a good question. You guys are really helping focus for all of us, your fellow students and me, the discussion we're having. You have 2 choices on how to submit there has to be a PDF, but if you want to do screenshots, just make sure you don't cut some of the margin of your answers off. I've seen that happen, and then I can't see if you completed correctly that essay or whatever. So if you can get a good, clean, clear, complete, there we go, clean, clear, complete, your alliteration of the day, image of each page, you can do it by hand during the test and or correct your answers and do it all on because I'm going to send you the test itself. I'm going to do that today. It'll probably be later tonight. I have another class coming up, and they've got quite a few slides to cover, but I will not push it too late. I mean, the latest would be is 10, because that class ends at 9:30. Probably sooner. If I can, I'll do it before 6 when that class I set up for that class. So look sometime after 9:30 tonight, or let's say by tomorrow for sure. And you might want to print it out. I would if I were you, so you can hand print it in. And then if you prefer to do it online, actually it's easier for most people, I should say. You only want to print it out if you think it's easier for you technologically to convert it into a digital format. I have to have it that way. Obviously, I can't, get your paper from you when I'm not going to see any of you in person. In hard copy, that won't work. So you could then convert it by using a screenshot and turning that into a PDF of your exam, and then forwarding it to me the way I just held up that, right? Instructions on the way to label it as a PDF. Or you can do the whole test online. You will be getting a template of the actual exam, blank, of course. Let's say by tomorrow. I'm just going to say by tomorrow. So that gives you a whole day ahead of time. Really, that's in some ways, that's an advantage that the in-person classes don't have, because they don't see the test until if they show up on time, 15 minutes before the first slide. But then they also are given extra time. On exam days and in-person class, if you ever take one from me during this new era of Zoom and mixed, some classes online, some not, it's only fair if the in-person classes have extra time. So I don't give slides after the test they can stick around till 9:30 if they want for me to, collect the exams. When the exam's only an hour, you'll see what I mean. It's not going to take you, most of you, more than an hour to answer each question as, fill in your answers for each slide. But you'll have the advantage of, I figure midnight's a reasonable cutoff because I have an evening class at night anyway. So as long as I can see that you turn in before midnight, I can't accept late exams. That opens up a whole can of worms. I'm telling you now, that's the cutoff, midnight. I have to enforce it. I mean, it's like, what's going to happen if the Russians start bombing over into Poland? I don't want to think about that. We could be seeing a really bad escalation of what that tragedy already is. You heard about they bombed an airbase right near the border of Poland. It's obviously Putin testing the resolve of the Western so-called, whatever you want to call it, alliance. Yeah. Anyway, the point is I have to have a cutoff because if I don't, then I have to open up for everybody where's the end point. So you guys have plenty of time. I mean, unless again, some emergency crops up that you didn't anticipate, but you have written evidence of only two kinds we're talking about: family emergency, again, not my rules, the college district rules, or a medical emergency. And as long as you show me something, for instance, I don't mind mentioning this. This was the most bizarre, legitimate excuse I ever had to agree to for someone to do a makeup. A person had gone to the night before the exam, or earlier in the day of the exam, I think it was, to some kind of nightclub in San Francisco with an aunt and an uncle, and the uncle got shot outside the nightclub and was in the ER. Well, that's a legitimate reason, but they didn't have any medical record of it. They sent me a clipping from the San Francisco Chronicle about that shooting with their uncle's name in it. Well, that's an unusual way of verifying, but it qualified as a written, valid reason to have a makeup. That's not going to happen, I hope, to anybody else in any of my classes. Of course, I was more than empathetic, and I gave them an extended period to do a makeup exam. Not exam, a makeup assignment, not an exam. And they were able to, catch their breath and recover. And luckily he survived. Oh, life is weird, isn't it? Especially in this day and age. So you guys, hopefully none of you will have a reason not to be. Just want to get, I would think you'd want to get that off your plate as long as you're physically able to attend a live lecture. But I cannot accept anything, no matter what the reason is, after midnight. Otherwise, it just becomes meaningless. There's no deadline. Then I have to, people can write a week later, they can turn in their midterm after they have more time than everybody else had. That is what's the bottom line here. A balanced, fair, equal playing field for everybody is the point here. All right, I haven't finished because we have a much more important part of this process is reducing the slides, the list of slides, by the amount that I promised I would do. But before we move on to that, everyone understands how the grading is going to be done in terms of the point totals. 15 points for each slide. Essay times 3 is 45. 9 points for each of the total of 3 for each of the slide identification facts from the syllabus. So 9 points for each slide you correctly identify. There's 5 of those. That's 45. 10 points for there'll be 5. Well, I already showed you. I held it up to the screen. 2 points for each of the true false that you get correct. So that's 10, and then 5 optional extra credit points. Okay, any other questions on the overall format of the midterm? Before we start the reduction process, I call it. This is the most valuable, one of the most valuable things we're doing today in any of my review sessions. And that's because it's going to eliminate a whole bunch of time wasted or unnecessary time, how you want to word that, from your study process, that you don't need to study the ones we're cutting. Okay, so now everybody, please take your pen, have it in your hand, and we're going to go through the syllabus and reduce by at least 40% the total number of slides. Then we'll do about 30% is realistic from the list of terms, because there aren't that many terms compared to how many slides there were on the syllabus. So we're going to do both those, and then that'll be what we finish with, and then I'll stick around for any other questions that you have. All right, so here we go. Everybody see, let's do it week by week, consistently, right? Week 1, All right, the only slide I'm not cutting will be the first. Well, wait a minute. Now that I look at it, sorry, it's the second slide. So here's what we do. And I'll repeat this list before we move on to the reducing the terms to know. All right, so week one, you're going to cut 3. All right, everybody now do this together. Cross off the Livy Sibyl. Of course, it's from the Renaissance. We don't cover that in this class. Wheat Field and Cypress Trees by Van Gogh. And the Guggenheim Museum by Wright. All right, everybody got that? That's 3. So that leaves only one, Laocoon Group by Polydorus, because that's an ancient Greek sculpture. Okay, and then I'll repeat this when we finish. So week 2, we're just going to cut 1, Bison from France. Uh-oh, I knew I'd forget something. I'm still, not fully recovered from that weekend here. I need to count how many in order to give you an accurate 40% reduction of how many there are before we do that. So sorry about that. We should have started that. Okay, so I'm going to do that. You want to do it with me? You're welcome. And if you have a calculator, you can figure out what 40% of the total is. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Exactly 50. So that's a nice round number, and that will make it easy to cut 40% is 20. So that will reduce it significantly. All right, so everyone now, I already said what week 1 slides to cut, and I'll repeat that before we move on to the other process of reducing the terms. But let's see, week 2, I think I already mentioned, but I'll say it again. You're only cutting 1 for now, at least, and that's Bison from France under week 2. Okay, moving on to week 3. We may have to go back and cut more if I don't come up with 20 by the time we finish the first run through here, okay? So let's see, head of a ruler from Nineveh, cross that off. And then let's see, Ashurnazarpal killing lions. Cross that off, okay? Week 4. Let's see. We'll do the pylon of Ramses II at Karnak, and the temple of Hatshepsut, and then the throne of Tutankhamun, because we already have the mass, so I'm not cutting that. So that's 3. Again, temple of Hatshepsut under week 4, pylon of Ramses II at Karnak, and the throne of Tutankhamun. Okay, week 5. Female figure from Cyclades, cross that off. And beehive tomb at Mycenae. So that's just 2 from week 5. We'll see what we end up. We're probably going to have to go back and cut a couple more before we get to the 40%. All right, so now we're doing week 6. Young warrior from Riachi. Temple of Athena, Nike by Callicrates. And let's see, Kouros from Athens. Okay, so that's 3 from week 6. And now week 7. Let's see. Tomb of the Lionesses from Tarquinia. Porta Augusta from Perugia. Well, it's hard to cut any of these others. Let's see. Well, I'll cut Cityscape from Boscorial. And that's all. That's 3 again. I'll repeat those. Tomb of the Lionesses under week 7. Porta Augusta and Cityscape. Okay, week 8. Equestrian statue of Marcus Aurelius. Cross that out. And maybe, let's see, the column of Trajan from Rome. So what have we got here? 1, 2 total that we cut. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. We got to cut one more. We have 19, right? So we're going to cut one more, and then I'll repeat the whole list. Okay. All right, I'm going to cut Nike Winged Victory under week 6. Go back to week 6. Nike Winged Victory because they're very similar to each other. And I already cut the Temple of Nike. Not to diss anyone, but we do have the Temple of, right, the most important temple in ancient Greece, the Parthenon, and that's to Athena and Nike. All right. So that gets us to 20. Let me repeat that list to make sure you all have it. And then before we move on, make sure there's no questions or any uncertainty about the ones that are not going to be definitely on the test. Okay. And then you just don't even have to think about those and just study the other 30, right? Okay. So week 1, you cut 3, the Libyan Sibyl, wheat field and cypress trees, and the Guggenheim Museum. Okay. Week 2, it just 1, Bison from France. Week 3, it's 2, head of a ruler from Nineveh and Ashur-Nazarpal killing lions. Okay. Week 4, it's 3, Temple of Hatshepsut from Egypt. Well, because he's all from Egypt. Temple of Hatshepsut, pylon of Ramses II at Karnak, and the throne of Tutankhamun. Okay, week 5, you're cutting 2, female figure from Cyclades and beehive tomb at Mycenae. Okay, week 6, we're cutting 4 actually, Kuros from Athens, young warrior from Riace, Italy, Temple of Athena Nike, and Nike Winged Victory. Okay. And then moving on to week 7, we're cutting 3 more. Tomb of the Lionesses, Tarquina, Porta Augusta from Perugia, and Cityscape from Boscorial. And finally, week 8, we cut the Column of Trajan from Rome and the Equestrian statue of Marcus Aurelius. Well, they're both from Rome. So that gets us to a total of 20 that I have now cut off of the syllabus study list, so you don't have to even worry about those. Okay, is there any, it should be pretty straightforward. Any questions before we move on to the next task, which is to reduce the list of terms to know? Any questions? All right, and I'll take any other questions at the end, just general broader questions, including ones not about the midterm. Okay, so now we need to do the same thing. So take your list of terms to know from 2.1, which you should always have out with you, as you know, from each of the weeks during each lecture, along with the syllabus. And I'm going to cut, let's see how many there are, 30% at least. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 30% of 21 would be at least 6. I might make it 7, at least 6, possibly 7. Okay, so let's do the same thing. Have your list of terms, right, for our 2.1, that you should already have those definitions in front of you. And you only need to cross not the whole definition that you wrote, but just as you could find it useful for your papers if you write about one of the works of art that relates to that term on your second papers. Okay, but that's up to you. If you want to cross out the whole definition, I guess it's no.
Yeah, I'm just putting a red X like next to it.
Yeah, something like that. I would just cross the word out, but yeah, whichever is easiest for you to remember. That's the key. Okay, we're going to cut out cherub. leaving in fresco. We're going to cut out amulet. People might mix it up with a menu item. Monolith and lintel, we're going to leave. Ziggurat, we're going to leave. Animal style, we're going to leave. Bas relief. Okay, we're going to cut out on, let's flip over to the next page, okay? Oh, by the way, this is just helpful, I think, explanation. How would these list of terms, of things invented by the ancient Egyptians, I think there's only two, and by the ancient Romans, there'll be others on the second half that'll might be on the final. I'm not going to ask you to list all five, but I might say things invented by ancient Egyptians. Here's an example for you, concrete example of what could be on the true false section of the midterm. So I might say things invented by ancient Egyptians include frescoes, flat-sided pyramids, and domes. Well, that's too obvious, but you get the point. That would be false, obviously. The Romans invented the domes. Or if I did that with the Romans, conversely, things invented by the ancient Romans included concrete, domes, and obelisks. Of course, it's false. That was an Egyptian invention. Or if I said written language, the Romans didn't invent written language. We still debate whether it was the Babylonians or the Egyptians that had the first written language, but definitely wasn't the Romans. Written language had been around for thousands of years by the time Rome became an empire. So you get the idea of how that is going to be with the true false questions. Okay, so all we cut so far, let's recap, was two slides, or I'm not slides, I apologize. Two of the terms that are on the first page of your list of terms to know for 2.1, and that was cherub and amulet. Okay, on the second page, cross off obelisk and kuros. Okay. So we're now at 4. Let's see. Cult of the Dead. You can cross off necropolis. Okay, and that's on the third page. So if you didn't flip, let's see. Let's just make sure you got that. So on page 2, it's obelisk and kuros. And then flipping over to page 3, cross off necropolis. And then we need to cut at least how many? One more, I think. I don't have a calculator in front of me, but my recollection is 30% of 20 is 6. Well, that's the nearest amount. Let's see. And I'll try to figure out how many that leaves. It would be reasonable for you to have, I used to leave 15 or 18. I would write them on the board, and then the students would say, okay, if Mr. Wilson didn't put that term or certain terms on the board, then I know those are the ones I reduced. That was kind of converse logic, but it worked. So what I'm trying to do is make sure we don't end up with more than 15 out of the 21. So I think we have to cut at least, yes, we do, one more. Okay, let's see. I think funerary. Yeah, funerary. All right. So I'll repeat that list. All right. It's 6. I think that's reasonable. Cherub, it's the 30% that I said I would do. Cherub, cross that off on page 1 of your list of terms. Amulet. And then on page 2, it's 3 more. Obelisk, funerary, and kuros. And then on page 3, it's necropolis. So in other words, aqueducts and triumphal arches, remember, this is important, they were both separate standalone definitions, even though aqueducts is under the list of things invented by Romans. So I might, on the true false thing, say an aqueduct is, whatever, for carrying grain or, dry goods from one city to another. Obviously, that'd be false because it's only for carrying water. Okay, so everybody got that? Everybody need me to repeat the 6 that we cut from the list of terms to know? So only 5 of those will be on the test. And you'll have this list of your own, hopefully very neatly printed, legibly readable notes for each of those definitions. So when you see one of them written out, you'll recognize, oh, that's that definition. Let me look up and see, is it exactly what I took down from the notes that, Mr. Wilson and I gave you in class. If it's not, if there's something about it that's not correct, even one part of that statement, that true false statement, then it's false. Pretty straightforward. Any questions about that? About what we just did, reducing that list? Okay, that's the 30% that I did mention. Okay, so those are the main tasks that I, needed to go over with you. And so now is a good chance to ask any other questions. But I think everyone understands not only just how the test is going to be given, what it's going to look like, but your options for turning it in. I hope so, because I don't think we had any late attend. No, we haven't anybody join us late after I had a late start with that set of Zoom. Again, my apologies, but you didn't miss anything, right? So this is recorded. So since it's recorded, I will post it online. Certainly, I'm going to go ahead and say I should be able to do it before 6 p.m. tonight. And then I'll send you the tests. You don't need more than 24 hours for it tomorrow, because I have a lot to do before my evening class, which is a full 3-hour lecture. Usually goes 3.5 because I log on early, and then I also stay, as I am going to do for every lecture, every Zoom lecture, after the last topic is covered, the last fact, I need to give you the last slide, whatever. Of course, today we don't have slides, because you can do this kind of review so easily on your own from the Zoom lectures. Those are staying on, obviously, all of the lectures. If you missed any of them and you didn't watch one, well, by now you should have, that you might have missed. Well, it's right there for you on my YouTube channel, whatever week it is you needed to look at. And the same applies for any one of those lectures you want to use as review material. Okay, so we've covered the tasks that we needed to for this session, but obviously that might not necessarily, might answer everyone's questions. Now, of course, if you email me questions, don't wait until the day of the test and expect to get an answer. I'm very busy. That's the day I drive up in person, teach an in-person class, meet with students in my office, tiny dark office. You've seen it on Zoom. It's a terrible space, but it works. And that's where the test will be given, is in that office. And of course, I've already chosen the slides, and no, I won't tell you which slides are going to be on, even if you ask me with extra nice language. That will be revealed as I put the first slides on the screen. Don't forget, please log on no later than 3:10 on Wednesday, 2 days from now. So you're all set with whatever format you want to do the answers. Remember, you have the choice of handwriting them. If you do that, please print. Don't give me cursive, as neatly as you can in ink, not pencil. Pencil's hard to read. It's too faint. So in ink, preferably black, so it's easier to see, because red is not always easy to read, and blue can sometimes be hard to read as well. So black ink, please, printed all your words on all your answers, and as neatly as you can, if you choose to do it that way, or you can do it online, of course. That way it's a digital format or digital document, and it's a PDF, right? Remember, that is the requirement. I can't accept any exams that are not in PDF format, as is required at all the colleges that we give online, classes I meant at this college, that are given online. Again, not my rule, that's a district rule. And remember how to do it. I guess I'll have it up one more time, just in case, because some people may skip the front part of this lecture when you weren't here, those 2 or 3 people. That's the way you should send your, I'll even hold this up again at the end of well, maybe right before the first slide, for those who log on, on time, like by 3:03.
You're holding up the title for our paper, not the midterm.
Right. Thank you. My apologies. You guys are really on the ball today, and I am just beginning to get back up to speed. Yeah, sorry about that. My apologies. You're correct. Or as it used to say, nobody knows who Johnny Carson was. He's the original late night host, and it's still the gold standard for that kind of entertainment. You are correct. he used to say sir, but that would be, of course, when he was talking, the sidekick he had would say that to Johnny Carson when he'd say something. No, that's not right. Okay, I stand corrected. That's how I like to say it. Thank you for pointing that out. I appreciate that for your sake and for the other students. Okay, that's the format. I'm holding it up for like 60 seconds, and then that'll be everything I need to say at this point, unless you have questions that I can answer. Okay, and I'll do that again right before the test, and probably at the end of it too, before I log off. But that won't be recorded. Remember, the exam is in real time. Okay, we've covered quite a bit in roughly just over an hour. So any questions now that I didn't answer or that you've thought of? Actually, any questions at all, not just about the midterm, because this is my unofficial office hours or informal office hours. As you know, visually and virtually, we have to do these so-called office hours online, unless you want to come to Santa Rosa JC and find my office at the end of the hallway in Annalee Hall. And then, yes, I can meet with you in person, but I doubt any of you want to do that. Okay, now is a good chance. Anybody? Any questions I didn't answer or anything that come to mind while, you know, we've been doing this review? Hopefully.
On the short essay questions, you said we only have to write about 6 of the 9 elements.
Yes.
Do we lose points for going over 6?
You lose points for what?
For doing more than 6. Like if we do an extra,
no.
just in case.
No, quite the opposite.
Okay.
Well, I can't give you extra points. The points are but I actually think that's not a bad idea if you have the time, because you might not do a good job on one of them, maybe, right? I'm being flexible. For instance, if you see mass, you know, the masses differently than I do as far as what the 3 largest masses are, I'm not going to take points off of that. But if, let's say that you see a slide where everything is completely dynamic, there's no straight lines, which does happen, as you know. For instance, the dying lioness, remember, there isn't a straight line in that. Right, the close-up bas-relief, remember, panel that I left on the study list. If somebody wrote that was stable, well, it must be they had a brain freeze, but whatever the reason is, they'd miss that amount of points. But if you did 7 or 8 of those elements, you made a mistake on one of them, but you got 6 at least correctly, you get that maximum 6. So yeah, actually, I'm glad you mentioned it. That's not a bad strategy. Giving you the extra time allows you that option, but you don't want to go crazy, and you don't need to do all 9. That takes longer for you to write and for me or the readers to grade. So it'd be best if you didn't do all 9, but you don't get points off, no, for doing more than 6. That's up to you. Okay, it's your option. Good question. All right, so here we go. Again, any questions at all? Now is a good time to ask about either the midterm or anything else having to do with grades or extra credit. I'll stick around at least one more minute to see. Sometimes people don't think of a question until right before we log off. Anyone else? Anybody else have?
Yeah, so for the extra credit, if we went to a museum that has like free admission and no ticket stubs, could we just send you like
2 things you can do. You can get some kind of, they usually have some kind of handouts, right, that they give you about what's on exhibit, you know what I mean, or something.
Yeah, I have a map of the museum, but I was thinking I could send you a like a Google Photos.
Well, yeah,
because
you just anticipated what I was going to say, but just so you know, you have 2 options. That's one of them.
Okay.
Take some photos, which you then would, but they need to be original photos. That shows me you were standing inside the museum when you took the photos, because you have to take a picture yourself. Well, you could if you want, but give me at least like 3 shots of different exhibits. That'd be reasonable. Okay. Or even easier, quicker, and less cumbersome is to have a museum docent sign the whatever piece of paper you have from the museum, whether it's a map or a summary of one of their exhibits or an overview of the museum itself. You know, usually every museum I've been to has some kind of printed material you can get for free at the front desk, right? Usually. Anybody hear about what happened at the Museum of Modern Art? I mean, I can't ignore this. That is one of my, in New York, the original MoMA, right? We have one in San Francisco, every big city now, practically in the US and Europe now have them. But the first one was in New York, opened in the 1920s, that far back. And so it's all 20th and 21st century art, right? not quite, actually, late 19th. And yeah, Van Gogh's, for instance, Starry Night is there. Some nutcase, some insane, God, what is it about? The 21st century, maybe it's the internet, who had his membership expire and was informed of that, both in writing and online, showed up, wanted to get in free to see an exhibit, was told he couldn't, he'd have to pay, and he jumped over the front desk and stabbed the front two desk workers. Could have killed them. Luckily, they're both going to survive, and then ran out. And of course, they found him. No, they haven't found him yet. The last I heard, they have, but the guy's on camera. They got to find this guy and keep him. I mean, what the heck is wrong with somebody who would do that? I mean, it's nice that he was passionate enough about art to get upset, but my God, first of all, how do you get a knife inside the museum, right? I mean, you'd think there would be a metal detector unless the knife was plastic. That's pathetic, isn't it? Yeah, what an insane world we seem to be living in. Anyway, that was at one of the most famous museums in the world. So yeah, you want to be careful enough. I'm just kidding. Of course, when you go to a museum, you're going to meet docents who are going to be there to help you, and they're not going to be afraid that you're going to attack them if you ask them to sign. My point is, the serious point I'm trying to make is it's an easy way, because they'll sign it and date it. It'll give their full name, and I would ask them to say, confirming the attendance of and your name. It's what is that, 2 lines? Their full name and the date, and confirming so and so attended, and that's it. And then you just send me a screenshot as a PDF of that page. Then you're done. But if you prefer to do the photos, that's fine. Maybe you want them for your own future reference, for a paper or something. Maybe.
I've already been to the museum.
Which
so
museum?
I can't really. It's the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C.
Oh, was it? It had to be during this semester to count.
It was. I actually just came back yesterday. So yeah.
Great museum. Did you see the Vermeer they have of a woman holding a balance? That's one of the most famous paintings. I cover it in Art 1.2. We cover that from the 1600s, because it's such a big museum. They also have several Van Goghs.
Yeah, I saw the Van Gogh exhibits. I saw
it's a great museum.
I saw one by John Singer Sargent, which was the person I did my
one of my favorite painters, and what an interesting life he had.
For sure.
There have been actual movies and documentaries made about him. Another tip for extra credit. By the way, I'll go ahead, since we ended earlier than usual. I'm going to go ahead and do a walking tour, unless, knock on wood, I do have to wait to see where things are in late April. But if the whole Omicron, outbreak is down as low as it is, even let alone lower, it should be. It's diminishing every week, according to the CDC records and things. Then we're going to go ahead and have that option for 20 points. If you come on a walking tour on a Sunday in May, I'm not sure which weekend, but one of those before obviously Memorial Day weekend before finals, you'd get 20 points for attending a walking tour where we go inside at least 2, sometimes 3 or 4 historic buildings. They could be homes or a combination of homes and non-residential buildings, but they're all beautiful buildings I've chosen because they're in my books that I wrote about Bay Area architecture, or not even just Bay Area, California architecture, the 3 books I had published. And so those would be, option will be open to anybody for 20 points. So keep that in mind. I'll let you know by email if that does happen, as well as on these Zoom lectures, at least 3 weeks before the event. I usually know, or 2 anyway, 2. Yeah, at least 2 weeks before. And you can invite guests. There is a fee because I don't get paid for that. It's a lot of work to organize these things. It's $20. That's not even half of what a heritage group. If you go to San Francisco, Berkeley, Oakland, or some other historic walking tour, you're going to pay $40, $45. That's standard. So I think it's reasonable for that. And then you, of course, drive yourself. It's not I want to make sure I have to keep repeating this, that if I do the walking tour, it is not a Santa Rosa JC event, sponsored or in any way. It's a separate event I would do on my own. I've done them for years, in which you are allowed to join, just like you are allowed to go to any other lecture or any other kind of tour or museum. So again, for the National Gallery, sorry, did you get some evidence from having photos? Is that what you're saying? You already have them?
Yeah, I took photos of some paintings I liked, and you can see the
Sure.
date
Perfect.
below.
Perfect. Yeah, so just send me the three that you think are most, whatever you find easiest to send or most interesting. I'll be interested to see
Okay,
which one.
thank you.
Yeah, you'll get 10 points for that, and I'll confirm that once I see them as a PDF, of course. Okay, any other questions about extra credit or other kinds of questions relating to the test or
I have a quick one. It might be obvious, but typed format in PDF files is what you would expect for the midterm. Is that correct? Just typed on the computer?
say it again?
To turn in the midterm, typed is fine, right? Just doing it on my computer and
Yes.
sending those PDFs.
Yes, converting it if it isn't
Yeah.
already a PDF when you do that, because I'm
Right.
sending you it as a PDF.
All
So
right, just making
yeah,
sure.
Sure, yeah, of course, that's part of our a reason for having this period after each regular lecture is over for any questions that relate to the class. Okay, anybody else? Anything else? Again, I will see you all, I hope no later than 3:10, hopefully closer to 3:03, 3:05. And then I will have sent you by tomorrow, let's say 24 hours minimum before the test. So no later than 2, but it might even be in the morning, late morning, perhaps, because I'm going to be up late teaching until 9:30 and then doing my office hours and then all the paperwork I always have to do and answering emails from individual students. So you will get at least 24 hours before the test, no later than 3, probably let's say closer to 2 or sooner tomorrow, the day before the test, the actual PDF of it for you to download. Okay, and then either fill out by hand or like you just were saying, the student that just asked, as a digital form doc that has to be forwarded to me, however you write it, as a PDF. All right, one more time, any other questions? Anything we've covered, the test or extra credit? All right, so I will see you all on Wednesday. Good luck. Make sure you have your notes ready and study a little bit, and I think you all do well as long as you made sure if you missed a class you watched that video online on, of course, YouTube under Mark Wilson's SRJC lectures. And if you have any other questions, then I can get them at least no later than tomorrow evening, not late, but let's say 6 p.m. That's reasonable. I will be able to answer those additional questions that way. But I can't answer a whole bunch of questions before the test starts. There won't be time. Maybe a very quick one or something, because we need to get to the slides and they need to be on the screen on time. Okay. All right. We'll see you guys on Wednesday. Good luck on the test. See you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Have a good one.
Good day. Okay. Have a good day.